This is Ronin, our protagonist, and just like Ryu, he is also single virgin loser, but also a pervert. Despite this, before his death, he kissed his half-dead commander. Then he regressed back in time to ask a lady, "Do you have a dick?" In the previous episode, Ronin casually executed a swift single slash during the practical exam. Upon witnessing this slash, the principal was initially shocked, and then the hot-tempered teacher slammed her leg on the desk, startled everyone. In one swift motion, she charged toward Ronin, placing her sword at his neck, and with a fierce look, like a wild beast, she asked Ronin, "Are you a virgin?" She asked from where he had learned that sword technique. Ronin replied that he had learned it on his own. Nabiros, still with a serious expression, placed her sword beside Ronin's neck and asked another question. She inquired if Ronin had seen her movements when she charged towards him. Ronin confirmed that her movements were indeed amazing, as she had swung her sword 3 times in an instant before placing it at his neck. Nabiros acknowledged that it was exactly 3 times, just as Ronin had observed. However, her tone turned angry as she criticized Ronin for thinking that no one would notice. Ronin was taken aback and a bit confused. Nabiros explained that, in that instant, Ronin had unleashed 2 ultra-fast slashes and intentionally slowed down the last slice, just in case the professors couldn't see his attack. As she explained this, the principal listened with a serious expression, while the 2 professors who had been making fun of Ronin were now bewildered. They hadn't seen the first 2 slashes, but they were theory professors, so it wasn't entirely their fault. So guys, today's goal is 3,000 likes. Please like and subscribe to support the channel. Now let's continue. On the other hand, Ronin was a bit confused because from his perspective, it was a completely different story. He had slowed down his last slice not out of arrogance, but because his sword was weak, and it would have shattered if he had used full force. Now, Nobiros was just glaring at Ronin like an angry beast ready to devour its prey, and Ronin was thinking about how to clear this misunderstanding. Then Nobiros suddenly took her sword away from Ronin's neck, and she turned back, her tone still angry and dominating, and declared to Ronin that she would teach him all by herself, and that Ronin was only hers. Ronin, still confused, watched as she sat on her seat, and the principal was left wondering if she was openly declaring that she would be taking Ronin as her disciple. Ronin remained in a state of confusion due to the unexpected situation, and then the principal announced that Ronin's test was over. The headmaster, with a kind tone, asked Ronin why he had come to this academy and what he wanted to learn. This question brought Ronin back to his dark past, remembering his dead friends and allies. With a serious and majestic expression on his face, like a soldier, Ronin replied that he wanted to learn to have no regrets. The principal's eyes widened in shock upon hearing this, and he told Ronin to wait for the result before he could leave. Then, as soon as Ronin left the room, the principal started laughing, wondering how he was going to teach Ronin when he was already this talented. The yellow-haired professor asked in shock, "Professor Nobiros was acting weirdly. What is happening? Did Ronin use some impressive technique?" The principal remained silent, thinking that it wasn't any technique. It was just a simple slash. As he was thinking, the dummy suddenly shook a bit, and then with a loud bang, the dummy's head got separated from its body and fell to the floor. This shocking event left the 2 theory professors in disbelief. They couldn't believe their eyes, wondering how it was possible to cut a dummy like slicing a vegetable when it was enhanced by high-level defense magic. Meanwhile, Ronin, standing outside, was thinking about Nobiros. He acknowledged that she was strong, very strong, and on par with Ronin himself when he was at his prime. But he wasn't confident that he could win in a fight against her without mana, and considering the aura thing she used while charging toward him. Then Ronin started to laugh a little, realizing that now he would squeeze all the juice out of her techniques to grow stronger. This time he would be able to save everyone. Then Ronin started to smile confidently, thinking that the practical exam went smoothly, like cutting through butter, and that the written exam would be a piece of cake. However, in the next moment, his face became depressed, his smile vanished, and he looked as if all the juice had been sucked out of his body. He muttered that he was done for, and would definitely fail, unable to enter the examination as he believed he would get a 0 on the written exam. Seeing this, Maria was annoyed, and Asel was worried. Maria turned to Asel and asked why Ronin hadn't been able to answer a single question on the written exam when she had given them the syllabus books to study a month ago. Asel replied that when they were traveling to their village, it seemed like Ronin's bag got accidentally replaced with some hentai books, and he studied those instead. Asel felt guilty, blaming himself for not being more careful. Maria, on the other hand, was not just annoyed but also angry. She couldn't believe how someone could be so oblivious as to not realize they were studying the wrong books, and she found it hard to believe that someone as foolish as Ronan even existed on Earth. Then, to lighten the mood, Maria held Ronan's hands and tried to stand him up, telling him to stop behaving like a 2-year-old and that everything would be all right. She explained that the practical exam carried more weight than the written exam, so if Ronan had done well in the practical exam, he should be able to pass. Just then, a magical circle formed in front of all the students, shocking them. A big hologram appeared with the names of the students who had passed the exam. Asura got 12th rank in the practical exam and 1st rank in theory, earning her a spot in the magical department. Maria got 9th rank in both practical and theory. They looked at the list with amusement. After a moment of silence, they turned to each other, and Maria's face showed a brief moment of emotion. Then, with excitement, Maria grabbed Asura's neck and exclaimed that they did it. Their hard work had finally paid off. It was indeed a happy moment for them. Maria pointed her hand toward the list, showing Asura that he got 1st in theory. Asura himself couldn't believe what he had accomplished. Maria started rubbing Asura's head and praised him, calling him a genius and addressing him as a cute bastard. Asura simply replied that she got lucky, because only the questions she had studied appeared on the exam. As they turned toward Ronan, they saw that he was just standing there like a statue, with a very depressed and pale face, muttering that he knew he would not get accepted into the academy. Maria immediately ran toward Ronan in shock, trying to manage the situation and saying that it couldn't be possible. Maria started to check Ronan's eyes, asking if he had checked all the names properly from bottom to top. Ronan, still with his lifeless face and depressed tone, replied that he had checked each and every name more than once, but his name was not there. Before he could finish his sentence, a fireball came flying from the sky and crashed in front of all the students, surprising everyone. After the fog cleared, they saw a majestic bird covered in flames. Ronan, Asura, and Maria were in shock, and Maria explained that the bird was a phoenix. But before she could say anything further, the phoenix glared at Ronan and fired a fireball toward him. Ronan, still lost in his depression over his situation, didn't react, and the fireball came flying toward him and exploded on impact. The fireball didn't damage Ronan, and as the fog cleared, big, bold letters appeared above Ronan's head, saying that he got 1st rank on the practical exam and 5,712th rank in the written exam. He was selected in the martial arts department. At first, Ronan, Asura, and Maria just stared at the text for a moment in silence, trying to process the situation. Then, with excitement, they immediately huddled around Ronan, with Maria on the left and Asura on the right, squeezing him from both sides. Ronan started to get annoyed because Mary's big fat melons were pressing against his face, so he tried to shake them off in annoyance, but they didn't budge. They expressed their happiness for Ronan, unable to believe that someone who ranked last in the written exam could get 1st in the practical exam, a first-time achievement in the Academy's history. Maria patted Ronan's head, saying she knew he could do it. Ronan was very happy, but his happiness didn't last long. Just then, he remembered something. If he was ranked 1st in the practical exam, that meant the Sword Saint got 2nd place. Given the Sword Saint's ego and personality, he wouldn't let Ronan off easily. Then Ronan thought it could be best to flee from here for the moment, but he was too late. From behind him, a chilling voice came saying, "So it was you, the one who came 1st in the practical exam." It was the Sword Saint. He was emitting a dark, chilling aura, and Ronan could feel it even from this distance. We got a close look at the Sword Saint. He was looking at Ronan with an arrogant expression, wearing a princely outfit with royal elegance. Now, Ronan and the Sword Saint were standing face to face, and all the students were whispering, unable to believe they were seeing the Emperor's rising star here. Ronan stood there, grinding his teeth, thinking that the Sword Saint's attitude was still the same as it was in his previous life. Despite being young, the Sword Saint couldn't stand anyone who was better than him at the sword. If he found anyone better, he would fight them until he defeated them and would even follow them into the bathroom. This was the type of person the Sword Saint was. To cool the atmosphere, Ronan hesitantly replied that he had no idea how he was ranked number 1, and it could be an error. Hearing this, the Sword Saint glared at Ronan for a moment and said, "Why is Ronan lying? Just by looking at Ronan, he can tell Ronan is strong." But Ronan casually replied that he really didn't know and told the Sword Saint to stop picking a fight and go away from him. Hearing this, the Sword Saint gently held his sword and then, in an instant with great force, attacked Ronan, saying that if he really was ranked number 1, then he should be able to stop his attack. If he died in the process, then he would believe that Ronan's rank was a mistake. Seeing this, Ronan couldn't believe that in his younger days, the Sword Saint's ego was even bigger than his mature self. Ronan barely stopped the Sword Saint's attack. Maria and Azel got panicked, thinking Ronan might get hurt. But the Sword Saint, with an annoyed face, said, "This is the proof that Ronan is indeed stronger than him." Meanwhile, all the other students were watching this scene in shock, wondering how someone their age could stop the Sword Saint's sword. With a serious face, the Sword Saint told Ronan to come at him with all his might, warning that he might get injured, and Ronan couldn't blame him afterward. Ronan, hearing this, was angry and annoyed, saying that if that's what the Sword Saint wanted, so be it. With a dead, serious expression on his face, looking like a hungry wolf, Ronan declared that he would show him what happens when someone annoys him. With that, Ronan instantly unleashed 3 heavy slashes toward the Sword Saint. The Sword Saint swiftly deflected the attacks with his majestic silver sword. Ronan then asked, was it enough to show how powerful Ronan is? Is the Sword Saint satisfied? On the other hand, just by blocking that attack, the Sword Saint's hands were trembling as Ronan's slashes were too strong. The Sword Saint complimented Ronan, saying, "Now he sees, with this attack of his, Ronan would have gotten a high score." Then, with great force and a dead, serious face, he once again charged toward Ronan, saying that the attack was not enough to defeat him, so he couldn't accept that Ronan was ranked number 1 until Ronan defeated him. Now Ronan was just too shocked, thinking that the Sword Saint was just too crazy. The Sword Saint's determination was clear. He wanted to see everything that Ronan was hiding underneath. Once again, the Sword Saint's expression became fierce, as if he would devour Ronan. He started a barrage of sword slashes at Ronan, and Ronan struggled to block his attacks. As the fight continued, Ronan found himself being pushed back. He didn't want to reveal his full strength yet, as it would ruin his future plans. So, he came up with an idea. Suddenly, he started running, confusing the Sword Saint. Ronan then hid behind Asel as the Sword Saint chased him with full force. Seeing this, the Sword Saint became even angrier, calling Ronan a coward and shameless for hiding behind a lady. Asel was a bit shocked and surprised by this comment. From behind Asel, Ronan replied with a wicked grin, stating that Asel is a guy, not a lady. The Sword Saint paused for a moment to process this information, and Ronan immediately seized the opportunity to deliver a heavy punch to the Sword Saint's face. The Sword Saint was momentarily blinded by the pain and began groaning. While the Sword Saint was on his knees, holding his face, Ronan called Mary's and Asel, telling them that now was the time. With that, they started running as if their lives depended on it, leaving the Sword Saint confused and in pain. After a while, as the Sword Saint checked his sword, he found that it had a small crack. Seeing this, he was shocked, considering that his sword was made of high-grade mithril, while Ronan's sword was made of normal black iron, and Ronan hadn't even used mana during their duel. The Sword Saint started laughing slightly, acknowledging that Ronan was indeed an interesting guy. He vowed to remember Ronan's name, convinced that they would meet again very soon. The next day arrived, and Ronan and Asel were following a map given to them by the Beastman professor, heading to a certain location. Asel, who was walking behind Ronan, looked very tired and asked if Ronan wasn't worried at all. Ronan inquired about what Asel was talking about, and she explained that the guy Ronan had beaten yesterday was rumored to be a member of the ducal family, a family just next in status after the imperial family. She wondered if Ronan would get into trouble for breaking his nose. Ronan, still following the map, reassured Asel not to worry too much. He mentioned that the Sword Saint, despite being a bit crazy about sword and martial arts, had a kind heart and was a good person. Ronan explained that even in his previous life, he was the type of person who always protected the weak and was everyone's role model. He also mentioned that yesterday, he had told the guards that it was just a spar and nothing serious, or else he would already be behind bars. After walking for hours, they were met with a devastating scene. In front of them lay a pile of corpses, a gruesome collection of wild animals, some fresh and some rotting, emitting a strong scent of blood and decay. Asel couldn't hold back her reaction and ended up vomiting at the sight. Ronan, seeing her distress, told her not to overreact and to act like a man. Asel apologized, explaining that the brutality of the scene had overwhelmed him, to which Ronan responded that he had warned him that Calaboros were not creatures to be left alive. However, something unexpected occurred. Asel, with a trembling voice, pointed at the sky, drawing Ronan's attention to something astonishing. All the blood from the corpses of the wild animals began to float in mid-air, collecting at a single place. Ronan prepared his sword for a potential threat, while Asel was too frightened to even speak. Then, to their astonishment, Ronan's egg started to glow and levitate in the air. In an instant, the egg began to absorb all the blood. Now, seeing this scene, Asura was so scared that she felt like she could pee her pants at any moment. She held on to Ronan tightly and asked him what was happening. Ronan, although unsure of what was going on, started laughing and said he had an idea. Ronan, a bit panicked and worried, explained that whatever was inside the egg had begun to awaken by drinking all the blood of the wild animals. He emphasized that it was not a normal creature. After an hour, the egg had finished absorbing all the blood. Ronan cautiously approached the egg, noting that it hadn't changed despite absorbing the blood. However, at that moment, the egg cracked slightly, and then multiple cracks began to appear. Ronan became very excited and started shouting for whatever was inside the egg to hurry up and come to his daddy. Suddenly, the creature inside the egg dashed towards Ronan and crashed into his face, breaking his nose. As Ronan held his injured face in pain, they finally got to see the creature. The creature had pitch-black skin with red eyes reminiscent of a vampire, large ears, and a dragon-like body with a long tail. Both Ronan and Asura were confused, unable to identify the creature as resembling any known species. Ronan pondered how a creature could hatch from the egg laid by the blue chicken-headed. It left them wondering if the blue chicken-headed gets smashed by a dragon. The little dragon slowly approached Ronan and began cuddling his finger. Ronan scolded the little dragon, telling her that her greeting had been a bit too much and pointed at his nose, indicating the result of her enthusiastic welcome. The little dragon listened with curious eyes and then said something in her own language. After that, she closed her eyes, and a magic circle formed in front of her. A blue beam of light emitted from the circle and flowed into Ronan's face, shocking him. As a result, Ronan's injured neck was healed, leaving him in disbelief. Asura was amazed and commented on how incredible the little dragon was, noting her healing magic. The little dragon then started rubbing her cheek against Ronan's cheek, and Ronan jokingly said he would forgive her just this once. Then, just like that, a few days passed, and the first day of classes arrived. We see a carriage stop in the street, and from the carriage, Iril stepped out. After taking in the sight of the city, she was amazed, holding her head in amazement and exclaiming that the city was fabulous. From behind, Ronan approached, noting that she must be tired from the long trip. The little dragon was sitting on Ronan's shoulder, hiding from Iril's view. Upon seeing Ronan, Iril immediately held Ronan's cheeks in worry, asking if he was eating properly because it seemed like he had lost some weight. Ronan wobbly replied that he was eating and not to worry. However, before she could say anything further, she noticed the little dragon on Ronan's shoulder. The little dragon, with a cute smile, waved her wing toward Iril, saying hello. Iril couldn't help but find it adorable and asked what this creature was. Ronan, without saying anything at first, held Iril's hand and gave her a warm smile. He assured her that he would explain everything later, and for now, she just had to follow him. Then we got a flashback where Ronan explained that when he was returning, he found a mana pool, and from there he took some bottles of holy water. After selling it to Don, he now had a lot of money. Now, back to the present, Ronan was sitting on a sofa in the most expensive dress shop in the city, and his elder sister was speechless and a little worried, asking if it was really necessary. Ronan replied that good clothes should be worn by pretty people. Then we got a wider look at Iril, who was wearing a beautiful dress and indeed looked like a princess. Ronan, upon seeing this, said he would buy everything that looked good on her. Just like that, after a while, Ronan had almost bought a pile of clothes, and Iril was shocked and couldn't believe her eyes. She asked if it wasn't a bit too much. Ronan, sitting with a leg crossed, replied that it was nothing compared to the love and care she had given him. She had made many sacrifices for him, and he wanted to make her life very comfortable. It was his time to do something for her. Now, hearing this, Iril just paused for a moment, holding her hand to her mouth, and then joyful tears started to come. She got a little emotional, and with a shaking voice she said, "When did my little brother grow so much?" With excitement and happiness, Iril started shouting and running everywhere, raising her hands and telling everyone to look over here and see how kind and caring her little brother was. Ronan was just trying to stop her in embarrassment, and the store owner and her assistant were watching this joyful scene from behind with a joyful smile. Still excited, Iril asked Ronan where they were going next, and Ronan explained that they were going to a workshop because his sword got damaged due to a crazy bastard a while ago, and he needed a new sword. As Ronin was coming out from the door, just bending the door, the sword saint was standing there like a ghost. He greeted Ronin and asked if Ronin was finally done shopping. Ronin turned toward the sword saint, and after a moment of silence, Ronin screamed, and the little dragon screamed along with him, both of them getting surprised. Still a bit dazed because Ronin suddenly went backward and bumped his head into his elder sister. She got a little bump on her head. Ronin, still shocked and surprised, asked the sword saint why he was standing in the door like a ghost, and if the sword saint was a stalker. The sword saint explained that he had just come to the city because his sword got damaged due to Ronin. Then his gaze became dark and chilling as he continued, saying that he saw Ronin coincidentally, so he followed Ronin here. He insisted that he was not a stalker. Ronin's eyes also turned wild, as he explained that a stalker was someone who followed another person secretly. Then Ronin took his sword out in anger, saying that his sword also got damaged, so who is supposed to blame whom? Just like that, they began to argue like 2-year-old kids. As they were about to fight again, Iril came in between them, scolding Ronin. She reminded him that she had always taught him not to use foul language and not to fight with others. The sword saint got startled by her sudden appearance. While Iril was scolding Ronin, he tried once again, addressing the sword saint as a bastard and claiming that he was the one who started it. But Iril scolded Ronin again, saying that now he was talking back, leaving Ronin speechless. Meanwhile, the sword saint observed this from behind, remaining silent and just staring at Iril. Then Iril, with a kind voice, slowly turned back while holding her hair, saying that although her little brother had a foul mouth, he was a very kind child. However, the sword saint didn't seem to hear a single word that Iril said. He was still in amazement, just gazing at her. The sword saint was mesmerized by her beauty, and it was love at first sight. He was blushing heavily and remained speechless, standing there like a statue, thinking to himself, she's not a princess, she's a goddess herself. Then Iril came close to the sword saint, apologizing for her little brother's behavior, while the sword saint was moving backward, too shy to come close to Iril. Still feeling shy, the sword saint said, while bowing his head slightly, that it was his fault, not Ronin's. Addressing Iril as a lady, said that she didn't have to apologize. Hearing this, Iril became happy and asked how Ronin could be so kind. She then held the sword saint's hand in excitement and expressed her gladness that Ronin had a friend like him. She requested the sword saint to take care of her stupid little brother. Meanwhile, the sword saint was barely able to contain his shyness because it was the first time he held a woman's hand, as he is a big-time virgin. Ronin, observing this entire scene from behind, was in complete shock, thinking what the hell is just going on. The sword saint, still sweating, spoke with a trembling voice. He first promised to compensate for the sword he had broken, and then he handed Iril a big round gold medallion with a dragon and a sword drawn on it. He explained that he didn't have any gold with him now, so if Ronin showed this medallion to any shop, he could buy any good sword he wanted. The sword saint also recommended a good blacksmith place and, like a gentleman, bid them farewell, saying goodbye and to take care. Iril was standing with the big medallion, and Ronin was still speechless, witnessing the transformation of the once crazy bastard into a kind and caring person. He wondered why the sword saint had given such a valuable identification proof to his elder sister. The medallion was so valuable that it could buy several villages. Meanwhile, the sword saint continued to tremble as he walked away, still overcome with shyness. So the episode ends here. Write part 3 in the comments. Thanks for watching.